Welcome to the podcast, A Drink with Derek. Follow comedian Derek Richards on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel and watch all episodes of the podcast. Now grab a drink and join your host, Derek Richards.
Here in Las Vegas, great to have you with me here on the podcast, A Drink with Derek Richards. Great to be back here. Nice to be back on land. Was out on a cruise ship for a couple of weeks. Had a fantastic time, but it's always good to be back home. And I'm excited to have our guest here on the podcast, Jerry Pauly, who has a podcast called Hillbilly Horror Stories. And funny story about meeting him. We'll get into that here a little bit later on. But I got to say this. Speaking of horror stories, I went to my very first Raiders football game. Here in Vegas over at Allegiant Stadium. And let me just tell you this. When you watch those games on TV, if you're an NFL fan, and you see this crew of people in the stands, and you're like, wow, are they just showing a couple people that look like that? No, those fans are all barnyard animals. I swear, it is literally like watching a football game in a prison rec yard at Rikers. They come as advertised. But the hilarious thing is that literally the biggest tool bag fan in the world was a Indianapolis Colts fan who was sitting like right in front of me and kind of just off to the side a little bit. One of those fans that like jumps up and stands up all the time, and he's the obnoxious road fan. I'm like, I really don't know why you think this is a good idea to be a complete D-bag at a Raiders game at Raider Stadium. But he did it. He was a complete knucklehead, but it was an experience. I don't need to go back and see it again. Like I said, that was my own personal horror story this past weekend. Hey, if you get a chance while you're scrolling the internet, grab a copy of my latest album, Double Down, which is recorded live at Laugh-In Comedy Cafe in Fort Myers. Grab it on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon. Also go to my website, DerekRichards.com. I'm going to be here in Las Vegas at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club from December 26th until January the 8th, and also doing a bunch of cruise ship stuff as well. My website is DerekRichards.com. Also, the Irish Comedy Tour we're going to be cranking up in February. Going to be starting off in Johnson City, New York. Some of our stops include Port Charlotte, Florida. We'll be up in New Hampshire. We'll be in Boston, Uniontown, Pennsylvania. And also doing some gigs in Wisconsin, Red Wing, Minnesota, the IrishComedyTour.com. Myself, Damon Liebert, our fiddle player, Derek Keene, our wickedly talented singer and guitar player, and also Mike Malone will be joining us, the IrishComedyTour.com. Follow us online and also on all the social media platforms. Now, let's get to my guest here today. I had the pleasure of meeting this guy many, many years ago and then reconnected with him on a cruise ship just a couple of months back, and fascinating. I had no idea that he was doing what he's doing now, which is a podcast called Hillbilly Horror Stories. And it's mostly a paranormal show hosted by author and former stand-up comic Jerry Pauly and his wife Tracy. They touch on all things eerie, including true stories behind your favorite horror movies, rock and roll and the occult, unsolved mysteries, and creepy true crime. Hillbillyhorrorstories.com is their website. Go on there and check it out. They have over 15 million downloads of their podcast. Here is a sample of it here, Hillbilly Horror Stories on A Drink with Derek.
Tracy, in
What?
Van Leer, Kentucky.
Why you keep
I will
saying
say
my
your name
name?
whenever I want to.
Dang it.
I usually say it only at the start of different stories, and since there's 3 or 4 stories, then. In Van Leer, Kentucky, near Paintsville, is the Coal Miner Museum. Technically, I guess the Van Leer Coal Miner Museum. We're going to go all the way back to the early 1900s. There was a teacher from Pikeville, Kentucky, John Caldwell Calhoun Mayo.
Nice name.
Interesting enough, when he got married, his wife did not take the name, Holding the Mayo.
You're funny.
Anyway, Mayo bought the coal rights to several areas of Johnson County.
You said on the Mayo.
Jerry Pauly, My guest here today on Hillbilly Horror Stories, or Hillbilly Horror Stories podcast. Good to see you, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, Derek. I appreciate it.
I'm
I
glad
don't
to
think I
have
could
you,
have
man.
picked I don't think I could have picked a worse clip for you to play. Well, I'll be honest with you. The only reason I chose that clip is because we've got over 900 episodes, and all of them are a little bit different. And most of these
Sure.
stories are kind of longer and complex. So I thought that one was a recent one, and I remembered that joke about Hold the Mayo, and I was kind of proud of myself, and that's why I chose that clip. But as the actual show, it's probably not the best representation. It's kind of boring, but we do like to have fun. It did show a little bit of mine and my wife's, you know, kind of camaraderie on the show.
Which is fascinating. I mean, it's great to see somebody that goes ahead. And I met your wife and on the cruise ship when we were on Royal Caribbean together. And you had a nice group of people that came out there because you guys had you recorded one of your podcasts on the cruise ship, correct?
Yeah, we actually we do live events all over the country where we'll just travel and do stuff, and we've been doing that for over 5 years. The show's been on for over 6 years, and we thought, it'd be cool. We've got a big enough following now to where maybe we could do a cruise, and we kind of threw out the possibility of doing that to the listeners, and we had a super positive response. So I have a friend that's actually a travel agent that could set that up. He actually was going to set it up for me when I did comedy about 10 years ago. And we had it set up, and my wife had to have open heart surgery 2 weeks before. So we actually didn't get to go when everybody else did get to go. So we thought, well, let's try this again with the podcast. But we had over 200 people initially put deposits and sign up. We ended up with about 100 that went. There were some people that backed out due to COVID restrictions and vaccine restrictions and stuff. But
Right.
We had about 100 people show up from all over the country and Canada.
That's super cool. It's great to see this thing take off for you. 15 million downloads of these episodes, which is crazy to me. Let me ask you this. What is our fascination with horror stories?
I think it's a couple of things, and I'll correct you on something, because since we've last talked, we're up to 18.5 million now. So it's
Wow. All right.
we get about almost 200,000 downloads a week. So it
Wow.
adds up really quick when you do it like that. To answer your question, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, with horror, I think people just like to be scared. That's why the haunted attractions do so well when Halloween season comes. I mean, it used to be they'd open up 2 or 3 weeks in October. Now they open up, 2 or 3 weeks into September and stay open through, the first week of November. So people really like that. They like being scared. I think they know it's a way of being scared, but not reality. Nobody wants to be in that situation for real. You don't want somebody chasing you down the street with a knife, but you like watching it happen to somebody else. So I think that's it. Well, Derek, you're a comedian. You see this all the time. You'll watch a video of somebody saying something so rude and disgusting, and you'll laugh your ass off. But if that happened in real life, you'd be like, damn, what a jerk. But it's funny when you see it in the movie. But I think with us, because we touch more on the paranormal and we're talking ghost and the afterlife, I think people have a big desire in general for hope that there is an afterlife. So when you start hearing ghost stories and my mother came back and told me this, or my uncle showed up, or my grandpa, I think that gives people hope that this isn't all there is on earth. So I think that's the fascination.
Well, now you grew up in a haunted house because you're in Kentucky right now. Are you in, where are you at in Kentucky? Louisville? Or
I'm in Lexington. I grew up in Faribault,
Okay.
which is just outside of Louisville. It's a Louisville suburb.
So you
Yeah.
lived in a haunted house.
I lived there for about 8 years. My dad still lives there. He's lived there for 40 years.
This is when you were little. You lived in a haunted
About
house?
13 years old. About 13 to 18 is when the haunting stuff happened. Then it kind of stopped. And my sister, who still lives in that house, tells me that there's the occasional thing that happens, but the majority of the stuff happened in a 5-year period from about the time I was 13 to 18.
Did you ever find out what the backstory was behind that?
It depends on how much you want to put into psychics and mediums and that type of stuff. We actually had a group from the University of Louisville that were mediums and psychics come out and they did like I guess you'll say a seance for lack of better terms. But when they were through, they were telling us that it went back to pioneer days, way before that house was ever built. It was more of a situation with the land. But they claimed that there was a one time a cabin there. It was obviously 17, 1800s, but it was a man's daughter got pregnant out of wedlock. Of course, that was a big no no. And he ended up, after the baby was born, he killed her and the baby and buried them on one section of the property, and then killed her boyfriend, lover, and killed and buried him on a separate section of the property. And they were saying that was what was generating all the hauntings. Now, I will say they didn't know any of the backstory when they told us. They didn't know what hauntings we were having. We just told them there was
Right.
stuff going on and they didn't want to know. And some of the stuff that we were having was like a baby crying. So that kind of tied in with stuff they were saying. And I don't know. And nothing else really led back to pioneer days, but that was the backstory we got. Nothing verifiable.
Well, I was going to ask you what exactly was going on with the haunting. Were lights being turned off and on? I mean, obviously you talk about a baby that was crying. Were like plates flying out of the cupboards? I mean,
I'll
knives and
tell you.
stuff getting knocked over. I mean, was it? Did anything get that crazy or
I'll tell
what?
you the first couple of things that happened. And Derek, I don't know how familiar you are with the paranormal tech as far as like terminology and stuff like that, but there's something called poltergeist activity. Now, poltergeist activity are things like you described. That's knives getting knocked over and stuff getting knocked around, and it actually is German. Poltergeist is German, and it translates loosely to noisy ghost. So that's why, like in the movie Poltergeist, seeing the big image, the scary image and stuff, that's not something you would see. But all the other stuff, like the chairs ending up upside down on the table and stuff, that's something you would see with poltergeist activity. And that is kind of what we had. Now, the first time we had this situation, my mother had a paternal grandmother and grandfather that practically raised her. So they were her parents to her. And my grandfather, great grandfather, her grandfather had just passed away. She was devastated. She went into a deep bout of depression. I didn't know it was depression back then because, I was like 13. Anyways, we're sitting in the living room and I'm sitting next to her. She's on a couch. I'm on a chair. There's an end table between us. On the opposite end of the living room is a big 800-pound console TV. You remember those. And on top of
Oh
that
yeah,
was this little chair that was like a pin cushion, but that's we had it sitting there. It's about the size of a doll chair, not very big. Now, this had a bunch of stuff sitting on it, so it was kind of weighed down, so to speak. My mom was on the phone with the 700 Club's prayer line, and I'm sitting in a chair drawing. She's on the phone with this prayer line. This chair on this television pops up literally about 2 feet in the air and lands 4 to 5 feet away from the television, right in the middle of the floor. I'm telling you this because it was obvious it didn't fall over. It didn't just get brushed off. It popped in the
right.
air and out. No reason for it to happen. We just kind of looked at each other and gave that. Did I just see that? And did you just see
Right.
that? And we both knew that we did. She hangs up the phone from the 700 Club, but that was the first thing that happened. And, and that kicked everything off. Now, some people will say, and looking back years later, knowing more that I now know about the paranormal than I did back then, that maybe all of the trauma that she was going through actually caused things to happen in the house, which is now what I believe, but I didn't believe that back then. So the backstory may not be anything that somebody told us. It might just be that she was kind of creating this with energy from her mind, and we just didn't realize it at the time.
Interesting. I've never heard it explained quite like that before. That's fascinating. So this happened for like 5 years. I mean, after
Mhm.
was it all the time? I mean, because if I'm sitting there trying to watch the game and the little pincushion chair goes flying across, like after day 3, I'm like, okay, we're out of here. I'm packing up. We're done. I mean, was this happening with regularity and you just got used to this, or what did it happen a couple times and you went, oh, and then nothing happened for several months and then it came back?
It wouldn't be like an everyday thing, and sometimes it would
Okay.
be a couple of weeks in between occurrences. Like that situation with the chair, that was the only time that ever happened. What we would
Right.
hear are like noises up in the attic, and we didn't have anything up in the attic storage wise. I mean, a couple of boxes, but there was no room to walk around or anything like that. But you could hear like heavy furniture, like a dresser being pulled along a wooden floor, and there was nothing that could have made that noise up there. So that would happen for a while. The biggest thing for me is in my room, I could hear voices whispering through our ductwork. So it would be distinctly three different voices, two men, one female. And you could hear it whisper, but you could never make out what was being said. And it happened so much that I would get freaked out. And I actually worked as a babysitter and cutting grass in a neighborhood and used that money to go buy a stereo at Kmart and set it right beside my bed. So I could just turn over in the bed and turn it on and off anytime this happened. Now, but but yes, we did get used to it to the point to where you just started to ignore it. But it wasn't something that was every day 24/7. But over the course of 5 years, it happened enough to where it was like, give me a break.
Now, was it like the Amityville horror? I mean, at any point in time, did you guys bring a priest or a pastor or a reverend over to the house to kind of explain something like this, or was that you just didn't even talk about it?
We did actually bring in a Catholic. We were Catholic at the time. And we
Okay.
had a church that was around the corner from our house that we attended. And we brought the priest from that parish over to do a blessing on the house. But it wasn't like anything you saw on TV where he was freaked out or he said, I got a feeling something. It wasn't anything like that. He just did
Right.
a blessing, but not, it didn't help. But we
It didn't
also
help.
didn't really have anything. Yeah, we didn't have anything that we didn't feel threatened. Let me say that it wasn't anything. It
Well,
was just like little
you
stuff.
got your priest off Groupon. That was the problem.
I wish.
What do you think you're gonna get? You're like, hey, this guy come by and bless the place for $1,000. This guy can come by and bless it for 30. Well, let's just save a couple bucks and see if the $30 model works. I still
Well,
love
you
the fact
start
that you bought a
low.
exactly. I don't want to go. I'm not going to shoot for the moon. Listen, let me just see if we can resolve this issue with $30 before we start wasting all kinds of money on holy water and crucifixes. I mean, now, did you do anything like that? I mean, did you hang crucifixes and things like that around the house? Because you hear stories like that where people go, I'm going to get these spirits out of here, and I'm going to put this type of stuff around the home, and it'll probably, uh, you know, chase off the bad energy. I mean, did you guys do that at all or no?
No, I mean, to be honest with you, like you're supposed to burn sage in a house is what they say to get rid of
Right.
it. And we didn't have any sage, but I did have some stovetop stuffing with sage in it. So I just cooked that and, you know, we
I
still
love the
had
way you were,
ghosts.
but we had a delicious Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we still had ghosts, but I was no longer hungry. So I mean, it was some sort of a win.
Oh God, that is so funny. When did you start doing this? The podcast itself. You said it's been like 6 years now. When
Yeah,
did you
we it
notice
was
that it was starting to get traction? I mean, now you and your wife. I mean, I know Tracy's obviously into this as well as you. I mean, I'm looking at the studio behind you, which is designed by Boris Karloff. I mean, that's a great that's a great studio behind you. Did you guys? How did you guys meet? Was it through this attraction, or was it, or did this evolve once you guys got together?
Well, the funny story is Tracy was never into the paranormal. And she don't like horror movies. She'll go if I take her to the movies and see them, but she knows if I say, "Hey, do you want to go to the movies?" She knows that that's what my intention is because we very seldom go to the movies to see anything else. But so some movies she won't go watch, and I'll have to take my kids or somebody else. My kids are all adults. I'm not taking like the 4-year-old to The Exorcist, so people don't get blow out of shape. But so the funny thing was when I started this podcast 6.5 years ago, it was completely different. So I had a friend of mine. I was trying to get out of comedy, Derek. You've been able to manage this rat race for 3 decades practically. And for me, I got tired of being on the road. I got tired of trying to set up dates. You're a master of getting yourself booked. I was not that good. And it's just a lot when you're a young starting out comedian and you're not as established. And I just got tired of that. But every time I would get out of comedy, I would miss being on stage and getting that feedback, because we're all attention whores, no matter what anybody says. That's why we do what we do.
You're right.
And
Absolutely.
I missed it. But then I started listening to podcasts, and I'm like, you know what? I think I could do that and maybe still get that feedback without having to do the rat race. And I was always into the paranormal. So I thought, this is what I can do. And I listened to a podcast called Real Ghost Stories Online. It was a husband and wife team, and they added a little bit of comedy. And I thought, perfect. So I immediately went out and got my wife, right? No, I had a friend from work that I thought, you know what? I'll make this kind of an adult comedy paranormal show. I think people will do that, because that's the comedy I did. It was adult comedy.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to do that style. And a friend of mine, we used to talk paranormal all the time. So I said, hey, let's do this. This will be fun. People would listen to this. And Tracy's like, why didn't you pick me? And I'm like, you're not even into the paranormal. Why would I pick you to do a paranormal podcast? That makes zero sense. And I started off with my buddy, Ricky, and we did 9 episodes. Oddly enough, I had to have open heart surgery after the first episode. So we recorded 2 episodes in advance so I could buy some time, because I'm balls to the wall in anything I do. I was not going to miss an episode, not even for heart surgery. So we recorded 2 episodes. That bought me a couple of weeks. And we do 8 episodes, me and Ricky. And then he had to miss because he wasn't as balls at the wall as I was. And he said he had a cold or stomach virus, wouldn't be able to make it over that night to record. And the episode was due out that night. I record, and that episode goes out that night. There is no stuff in the can for me. And I told Tracy, we were on the road. It was like 4:00. I was like, you know what? I think you're going to have to fill in tonight. And she's like, I have no idea what the story is going to be. How can I fill in? So I told her, I said, you just follow my lead and you respond however you want to. And that's what she did. And it worked great. Ricky came back for 2 more episodes. And then he's like, dude, your wife was way better at this than I am. Y'all had a chemistry. She should be your full-time host. And that's what happened. So from episode 12 on to now, we've got about 900 episodes. She's been the host. And that little system of her never knowing the story is what works out for us. She never knows the story that I'm going to tell her. So you get honest reactions. And that's what most of the listeners are thinking, whatever, questions she asks. And
Sure.
That's been really the secret to our success. We would have never made it this far if it had been myself and Ricky doing what we were doing.
So you went ahead and killed Ricky, and now you created another horror story for yourself. I see how this works. You kill off former hosts, and now it just builds another story to your to your catalog. What horror movie scares you to this day? What horror movie do you watch? The Exorcist. Yeah, that's one of my. Good.
I was going to say The Exorcist was something that as a child watching it, it scared me. I was like 10, 11 years old when I saw it, and it scared me. And it's been my favorite movie of any kind of movie ever since. And you can see just in a little bit that you can see there's 2 or 3 Exorcist things on the wall behind me, and there's several more in here. It's by far, I think it's by far my favorite movie. That's not even close, but that one scares me. I think because, you can outrun Jason or Michael Myers, you can get away from some of these other things. But I think when you talk about a demon just coming in and possessing a child, and it's like, okay, well, the devil could just come in and possess you and ain't shit you can do about it. That's kind of scary. And that's the part that always got me, I think.
And I'm not a fan of kids, so I just think every kid is possessed by a demon anyway. So that's why, because I think like the early, like you said, you saw this, many, many years ago when it came out. And I mean, like for me, The Exorcist creeps me out. The Omen creeps me out. And Carrie creep me out also. Those are the 3 that I'm like, okay, they come on. I'm like, oh, all right. This is just going to be weird for a while. So, I mean, the slasher type films, that doesn't, that doesn't appeal to me. I know a lot of people love it, but yeah, those ones where it's like demonic possession, like you said, The Exorcist, and then like I said, for me, The Omen, I'm like, I just do.
So you brought up Carrie, And when I was talking about my mom earlier, and I was saying, she could have been creating all that without realizing it. That's a similar situation to Carrie. Carrie had that ability to things would happen even if she didn't know she was causing it. So
Right.
it's a very similar situation.
Yeah, I've dated women like Carrie, so let's just move on. You touch on the thing in the bio that you had sent over here: rock and roll and the occult. Explain your the rock and roll and the occult hook.
Oddly enough, that was the first episode that Tracy ever did. It was Rock and Roll and the Occult, and I had already planned on doing all of the work on that one. So usually Ricky and I would split stuff up. I was doing all the work on that one, so it was a perfect episode for her to just chime in. But we talk about stuff like you probably saw back in the 80s of the satanic panic that was going on around the country, and that's when Tipper Gore came out with putting all the labels on albums and stuff, and they were trying to sue Ozzy Osbourne for whatever, so all that stuff was going on. Well, at that same time, obviously, you had people claiming that all this music was satanic influenced, and we cover stuff like in that particular episode, the main one. We've done 4 or 5 episodes on it, but it's stuff like Robert Johnson that supposedly sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads to be a better blues guitarist. So that was a story that we covered. We've covered a couple of violinists from back in the 1500s that supposedly sold their soul to the devil to become better violinists. But the main thing we've covered are things like Hotel California, the song. If you're back in the days when you could get albums, well, they're back now, but back before they went away, the Hotel California, you could actually open it up, and in the top, it showed the inside of the hotel, and up in the top right hand balcony area, there was kind of a darked out version of Anton LaVey, who started the First Church of Satan. And if you go back and listen to all the words, we actually broke down a bunch of the sentences and the meanings to Hotel California. And like the First Church of Satan was started in a hotel in California. You got Anton LaVey up in the screen. You've got stuff like you can stab it with its steely knife, but blah, 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 blah. They're talking about the beast and you can check out anytime, but you can never leave. And, all these things actually, if you sit and break them down, that, now the Eagles are set to tell you that's not what they mean, but they actually use some phrasing in that, like one of the things are, we are programmed to receive. Well, in Anton's first book, or the book of Satan, one of the things that he preaches in there is you're programmed to receive. So some of this is just too close to be able to say it's not it. But we break down stuff like that. We broke down Stairway to Heaven. We talked about what people say were backmasking in the songs, backward messages that were satanic. And we would play some of those and tell you what it was supposed to say. And we always preface saying we don't necessarily believe that that's what it is, but this is what's out there, so.
I remember messing up a needle on my record player when I was a kid. Like I'd stop it and I'm trying to spin it backwards, and then the needle got all jacked up, and it was my mom's record player, so she was pissed. She had to get a new needle for the thing, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm trying to hear the devil talk to me." And she's like, "What is?"
Right. I mean, why wouldn't you be?
Just go play catch with your brother. What is your problem? What is your? I want to go ahead. The show's obviously called The Drink with Derek. Do you enjoy an adult beverage?
I actually don't. And it was funny when you asked me that. I'm like, how am I going to be on a show called a Drink with Derek when I don't drink? But I like, I've never drank. I've never tried any kind of drugs.
Wow.
But it wasn't for the obvious reasons. I just didn't like the way any of the alcohol tasted. So I just didn't do it anymore. And, I was always the life of a party even when I was young, whether I was drinking or doing anything or not. So I was lucky enough to never have peer pressure.
Now, what I want to do right now is, Sean, pull it full screen right now. I want people to, again, examine this room. Pull Jerry full screen. Let's see. Everything in that room is designed not having any alcohol or narcotics. I'm just going to share that with people. Okay, let's bring him back in. And I want to go ahead, because you had sent some really cool pictures. Sean, go ahead and pull these photos up that Jerry had sent us. His podcast, Hillbilly Horror Stories. Hillbillyhorrorstories.com is the website. This is your... is this your studio?
It is. And this is funny because up on the top right there, you can see that Ozzy Osbourne a Ouija board. And I don't have
Yes.
a picture of it in this group, but that's an actual a Ouija board. It has never been opened. It's got a value of about $200. Back in the early 2000s, Ozzy did a tour, and for $666, you got a seat in the front 10 rows. You got one of those Ouija board, and right next to it, just out of the picture, is an actual signed giant version of a ticket, and it's not a copy of a signature. It's actually signed by Ozzy Osbourne. So I've got that hanging right next to the Ouija board.
This looks like the creepiest sex dungeon I've ever seen in my life, with the couch there and the skeleton and the heads all
I'm
around.
not I'm not going to confirm or deny, but go ahead.
All right, next picture, Sean. Let's see this here. What's the okay, this is what am I looking? It's a different angle here. This is
Yeah, it's
the
just the
skulls on the
bottom
floor.
view.
Okay.
It's a couple of creepy dolls. That's actually the thing that's sitting. It's sitting on a hay bale. It's kind of hard to see. It's a small one, but it's
I
a
see.
rubber. It's a rubber prop. So it looks like it's designed to look like it's a zombie coming out of the ground. But that actually came from a haunted location that we have around town.
And let's see. The next picture here, Sean. Let's see what we've got here. This is a hilariously placed University of Kentucky football pillow, or is that a rug?
No, it's a pillow. It's for the dog because our dog is actually part of our show, so that's his little place.
Okay.
But that says it all right there. Literally, there's a over to the side of that little cube. There's a cow skull that somebody gave us on one of our trips to Dallas. And then you've got some stuff from Waverly Hills Sanatorium, I should say. Down the bottom left, you can't really tell, but at the corner of that UK, that's a brick from the Limp Mansion in St. Louis, which is a notoriously haunted place. Up on the top, in the very middle, you can see that lighter little piece there. That's actually a transcript from the trial of Lizzie Borden that somebody sent me. So you can, it's a little book, you can open it up. And then you've got on the very end to the left, that's Robert the Doll, who they just had a big shock documentary come out around Halloween. But he lives in a museum down in Florida. He's supposed to be the most haunted doll. That's a miniature version of him. But right next to that is a picture of me next to the real haunted doll, Robert, down in Key West. And
now,
on the right,
house haunted? Is your house haunted?
Yes, and there's a funny story behind that too. It's nothing major there.
The house that you're in now is haunted.
Yes, it's funny. We got this house from I wouldn't say a friend, we'll say an acquaintance, and so we've lived here about almost 7 years now. April will be 7 years, and we started hearing stuff. And there's a downstairs in our living room. There's a coat closet. It goes underneath the stairs, and the dog and cat will always go over and just stare at it. And we couldn't figure out why. And well, we had the dog 2 years before the cat came. And so the dog would do that. Then when we got the cat would do the same thing 2 years later. So we thought, well, damn, that's weird. And we had to have some work done. And we called a plumber. And this plumber happened to know and was good friends with the person we got the house from. And he told us, he said, hey, you guys ever noticed anything weird in the house? And my wife's like, what do you mean weird? He's like, you ever hear noises or see anything? Well, apparently he used to come over and play cards with them all the time. And his daughter would go over to that same closet and stand there and have conversations with somebody who wasn't there. So how odd is that we run into this guy that actually was experiencing the same thing that we had? But he told us a story one time about he was house sitting for her. He had to come over here and feed a couple of her dogs. And the dogs were downstairs, and he could hear something moving around, walking around upstairs. And he even yelled up there that he had his gun, and they could either come down now or they wouldn't come down at all. And he ended up going up there, and he checked every room, and he couldn't find anything. And he left and told her that, when he was done feeding these dogs this time, that he wasn't going to come back anymore. So yeah, we've experienced a lot of stuff in here, but it hadn't been anything threatening. It's just been noises and stuff.
Well, you keep bringing that Boris Karloff's decorator, and then you keep bringing that stuff in. Of course, it's going to be haunted. Let's see the other pictures that were popped up there, Sean. Let's go ahead and pull those up. There was a couple. Okay, this is the other side of the. What is that on the right? Wow.
That is a 6.5 foot animatronic clown. So you can actually turn it on and it talks and moves its head and its eyes light up.
I think I actually hooked up with that at a bar one night. That literally would not be that far off base, to be honest with you. That is so funny. And what else? Show the other picture. What else do we have here, Sean? Let's see here.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's a better version.
Oh,
of the
yeah,
clown.
I definitely hooked up with her. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that I did. What? And Sean, you had. I'm going to pull Sean, our producer, in here real quick because we were looking at these pictures before you came on, and Sean had some additional decorating ideas. So here we go. So Sean, hop on board here and make sure that everyone can hear you here. What's the what decorating ideas would you like to share with Jerry that he and his wife Tracy can go ahead and do and add to this ambiance?
Well, black walls first of all. Black walls, maybe like some fake blood coming down from the ceiling. Let's see. Make that light fixture up there red too. Kind of give it some ambiance.
Huh?
We do actually need to be able to see in here when we do the when we do stuff. It would be hard to do with a red light up there.
Hey, we didn't say these were functional ideas. We just said they were ideas.
I mean, I like the idea of having
great.
a red light district in my own house, but
I think it'd be great to put crime tape on the floor, outlining a couple of where bodies would be. Which
now that actually would be a good idea. That would be a good idea.
Well, Sean and I were talking. I said, I can't believe. I said, can you imagine like accidentally breaking into Jerry and Tracy's house, and then you crawl into this room, and you just think this was the worst idea ever. Like you shine your flashlight around. I mean, we're seeing this lit up. Can you imagine crawling in this with a flashlight and hitting the heads and the skeleton and everything else going on? That's a great deterrent.
I want to point something out because I'm actually proud of this. Out of everything we've got, and we've got some cool stuff in here, but back there by the window up on the top left, you can see a big poster on the wall. That's actually a Cabin in the Woods poster. And Fran Kranz, who was the star of that movie, is a fan of the show, and he actually autographed that and he sent it to us. So it's an actual theatrical poster with the picture on both sides and everything, and it's signed by Fran Kranz, and that's the coolest thing that I think we've got in the room.
That is really neat. Very, very cool. Some killer shots here, no pun intended. What's the most, Sean, let's go back and we'll take these pictures down. What's the most memorable horror story that always sticks in your mind?
There's a bunch of them, obviously. The Zach and Addie story out of New Orleans post Hurricane Katrina is probably the one that sticks out. A lot of people know that one, but it had a little bit of everything. In a nutshell, like I said, when Hurricane Katrina happened, most people moved out of the city, but there were a few people that hung around and they made national news. They would sit around on rooftops and kind of keep track of stuff. And Zach and Addie were two of them. Zach had been over in the war over in the Middle East. And so he had come back for that. He and Addie were bartenders. That's how they met. They were boyfriend, girlfriend. And shortly after that, they moved into an apartment over top of a voodoo church. And something had happened, but Zach, I guess, kind of lost his faculties, we'll say. And he killed Addie. He cut her up into pieces and he cooked some of her on the stove and put some of her in the refrigerator and ate some of her, from understanding. That's still kind of debatable. And then he went, took all of his money out of the bank. He partied for a day or so, and then he jumped off the Omni Hotel and killed himself. But in his pocket was a note saying that they needed to go to the apartment and find Addie. And that's what they did. Wow. And now Bloody Mary, who is a voodoo priestess in New Orleans, she's very well known. She bought the place. She turned the downstairs into a museum, a paranormal and voodoo museum. But that apartment is still upstairs, along with the original refrigerator and the original stove. So you can go up and tour all of that. But supposedly Addie's spirit haunts that place, and Zach's body or his spirit actually haunts the Omni Hotel in there. But that's the story in a nutshell. There was a lot more to it, but it's a crazy story. And you know, one of their best friends who actually helped on a documentary about a year later was actually, after the documentary, she was involved, or her and her boyfriend actually took a hooked up with a stripper um, in New Orleans, and oddly enough, they took her out and dismembered her and put her in garbage cans and threw her in the river, and she was arrested for it. So how about a strange connection like that to happen between people? And so that story just always stands out because of all the complexities. And I'll tell you another reason it stands out. The young lady that was involved in the very last bit I told you, the dancer that was dismembered and thrown in the river, turns out that her brother was a listener to the show, and he wrote me a scathing email telling me how disappointed he was that we covered that story. And he and his mother, who was still alive, were constantly having true crime podcasts and TV shows cover that, and they were constantly having to relive that. And it really made me, I apologize, and it really made me rethink covering stories with people that could still be alive, because that's not something we ever intended to happen.
Well, no, I mean, you're just, sharing a story. I mean, it's a fact. It's something that happened. It was a horrible situation. I mean, it obviously sucks that the family's got to deal with that on a regular basis. But to come after you for retelling a story, that's a pretty.
Well, he was very nice about
story.
it, though. He was very nice. He wasn't a jerk about it. He was just saying that he was, and I get it. If I love your comedy. And if one night I just turned on your show and then you were blasting me about something, I would probably be like, "Damn, dude, I thought I could count on Derek to not do this." And that's the way he looked at us. We were a podcast he loved, and the next thing you know, we're covering something that's typically out of our realm. That's not what we do. We don't do true crime,
right?
So he wouldn't have expected to hear that. But I get it.
Well, and I'm not going to advocate, let me just backpedal here for just a quick second. I'm not going to advocate eating people, but if you're going to eat people, eat somebody who was cooked by someone in New Orleans, because it's going to have some good flavor to it. I mean, let's be honest.
this is probably true. And you're probably going to have heartburn later, so have some Rolaids.
Little heartburn. I like how it was so well thought out, how he actually... How he cooked the person and put some in the fridge, because you got to have leftovers. It's like Thanksgiving. You're going to have turkey sandwiches for a while after Thanksgiving. So you're going to see the fact that he put some in the fridge, he cooked some, he ate some. I mean, I give the guy credit for being resourceful. I'm not saying it's right.
Can I throw something at you? I know normally you have your guests tell a drunken story. And obviously I don't drink, so I don't have that. But I do have a story that I wanted to share.
Go for it.
Okay, so I don't know why I find this so funny, and it's more of a you had to be there, but I'll do my best to describe it. So at one point in time, about 8 years ago, I was a regional manager for a rent-to-own company, something like Rent-A-Center, Aaron's, think that. Mm-hmm. And it's a smaller company. I knew the owner well. He brought me in to work specifically with him. And we're at this convention in where was we at? We were in a casino in Indiana. So we're sitting at breakfast. He is to my left. So it's him, myself, and then we have 3 other people. It's 2 store managers and an insurance agent that actually sold us our insurance that we use. We're sitting at breakfast. I get these sausage links, right? So I stab it with my fork. I pick it up and I take a bite. Now I'm facing him when I take a bite of this end, and grease shot out onto his shirt. Now he had about a $90 really nice Oxford shirt on. It squirts on his shirt, but nobody notices. No, I'm the only one who knows. And I got to make a decision. Do I say something, or do I just, once I saw that nobody else noticed, I let it go. So now we're going to go about 5 minutes later. He looks down for whatever reason, and he notices. And I see him do this, look down and look, and then I see him look up at the sky to see if like maybe there's a leak in the roof. But he looks up in the sky and then he starts looking on the table to see if there's water on the table that he might have leaned against. And I'm again saying absolutely nothing. Well, then he calls the waitress over and asks if she's got something to help clean that, a napkin or something. I'm like, oh man. And he still, I don't think, realizes it's grease.
Yeah.
But and he's telling her, and he's fabric, and then now he's telling everybody about it. But here we are, almost 9 years now later,
Right.
and and he still does not know. I talk to him still on a regular basis, but I don't think you'll hear this. But he still does not know that that's what happened that day, and I just think it's so funny that I've told a bunch of people about it, and they all think it's hilarious, but he don't know, and that's the funniest part. Is 9 years later, he still doesn't know what happened to his shirt.
There's so many inappropriate ways we could take you squirting a guy with sausage juice, and I'm just not going to go down. I'm just not going to grab
sure.
that low hanging fruit. I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna grab it. I'm going to acknowledge that the low hanging fruit is sitting there, but I'm not gonna pull it off of the tree. I want to see that. Show everybody that lamp. By the way, that's also in your studio. It wasn't in the picture. You showed it to us before we started recording.
I'm going to turn it off
thing,
first. I think it'll look bad.
I know you got to grab your camera and adjust it here, but this lamp is so creepy. Explain the lamp.
It is an Ed Gein style lamp. So you can see it's just a regular lamp. But Ed Gein, of course, was the Plainfield Killer in Illinois. He was known for basically that's who Hannibal of Silence of the Lambs was made after. But he would kill people, and then he would skin them, and he would make pants and shirts and whole suits. But he also made lampshades, and so this was inspired by him.
You know what? I think if your buddy was wearing one of the Ed Gein inspired shirts that was made of human skin, that sausage juice would have just wiped right off.
It's possible. It's possible. Or it would have just been good for later. I mean, you can always just, it's there. Yeah, I'll show you another cool thing while we're at it, because this is something kind of weird to have. Let's see.
This is something kind of weird now, really, after everything we've seen so far. Now you're going to go, oh, by the way, this is kind of weird. Okay, now what is this?
That is a stainless steel bedpan. That's an original bedpan from Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So, how many people have one of those?
You're it. In the scavenger hunt, you are the winner in this one. Does your wife also go out and buy this stuff, or is this kind of, she knows this is your thing, this is your room, this is your man cave?
No, she doesn't buy anything. And let me be honest with you, about half of this stuff was given to us by listeners and stuff. So we're constantly picking up or getting something new, and so but the lamp I bought.
You should buy that. Now, craziest fans, because everybody has crazy fans in some capacity. I would imagine that your podcast, just by the nature of what it is and the topics that you cover, would draw some pretty interesting people out. Is there a craziest fan story that you have?
We're pretty lucky. We haven't had anything really bad crazy. We've had some good crazy. I mean, Tracy lost her father 3 years ago, and when that happened, we had a listener that we barely knew at the time send us $200 just to say, "Here you go." The coolest thing, though, is we've had listeners tell us that we've saved their life in one. Yeah, we've had listeners tell us that we've saved their life in one way, shape, or form, and those are the ones that. And I mean, I'm not talking a couple. I'm talking we get 5 or 6 of these every week that send us something saying we've changed their life in some way. And when I wrote my book a couple of years ago, I actually put about 25 of those stories in the back. Just for people to see. But I mean, we had a guy write us and say, I don't know if you knew this or not, but a good listener of the show who had been on our show, she passed away, and he said he wanted us to know that she had passed away, but he also wanted us to know what a difference we made in her life. And this coming from her boyfriend. We had somebody tell us that they had lost all faith in God and humanity, and because they had lost their
I say
6-year-old
that.
son to cancer.
I say that every day, just on a regular basis, but not
I
making fun of the
completely
fact
get
that
that.
someone lost their 6-year-old son to cancer. But I just say every day I wake up, I'm like, another day of this. Okay, here we go. But no, continue.
But
They lost their
she
6-year-old
lost her
son to cancer.
she lost her 6-year-old son to cancer, and she had always asked for him to give her some kind of sign. She got nothing. It was ruining her marriage. She was in a deep state of depression. She had lost all faith in God and just didn't feel like he was in a better place. And why would God let this
Right.
happen to her little boy and all that? And I get that. We had done an episode that talking about dimes. I don't know if you've heard this or not. You've probably heard the expression pennies from heaven, but dimes, a lot of people feel like that loved ones after they leave will leave dimes just in odd places for you to find, and that's a sign that they're still around. And we did a story actually talking in detail about that and giving some examples. This young lady wrote us an email saying she didn't listen to podcasts. I used to advertise on Craigslist because it was free back in the day. I would go into rants and raves, which is where you would go to bitch and gripe about local politicians and stuff. Because it was free, I would just, hey, listen to Hillbilly Horse podcast. And this lady said, look, I don't listen to podcasts, and I saw this, and I don't know why, but something said listen. So I actually went and listened. I don't get into the paranormal. It's not my subject and any of that. But I heard the story about the dimes, and it dawned on me how many dimes I found, to so much so that I had pointed out to my husband about how many dimes I was finding. And I'd never heard that until I heard it on your show. And I felt like it was meant to hear that. And she had told me that because of that, she had now had her faith back in God. She felt like her son had reached out to her, and she was going to counseling to help her in her marriage. And that was the first email that we got that was of that magnitude. And now we've literally had hundreds of them along that line.
So you've got some good fans. You don't have crazy fans. See, I would have thought that this would have drawn out some Looney Tunes, but you got nice fans. Oh, this one sent me $200, and you changed my life. I tell one inappropriate joke, and I get 10 knuckleheads sending me some kind of message, and you guys.
Well, with that,
you guys
so let me give you
fans.
one of those. Let me give you one of those. This actually just happened.
So
Sunday.
there is one.
So,
okay, all right, here we go.
It happened 2 days ago. All right, so we did a story of a disaster that happened in California, Christmas time of 1985. A small plane crashed into a mall, and in this little sound, the airport. Originally, it's a small airport, so it wasn't commercial planes. It was a small airport. It was built in like the 1940s. And there was nothing there except marshes and wide open spaces, right? Well, they decided to build a town really close to it. And then as the town built up, people started bitching about the airport. Oh, this is going to happen. There'll be a crash. And they were complaining about the airport. Well, with that being said, my wife says, well, I mean, how hard would it be to move the airport? And I said, well, I mean, why should they have to move the airport? It was there first. They shouldn't have built a town next to it. So anyway, this plane crash happens into a mall, 70 some people injured, 10 people killed 2 days before Christmas, 8:30 at night. This is a major catastrophe. And the next day, some of the stores in the mall that were farther away that weren't affected, they reopened. And we said that was disrespectful in our eyes. So I had a guy write me and say, hey, I just heard the story. And for your wife to say that they needed to move the airport, and for y'all to say that's disrespectful for stores to open up, you know nothing about those stores or what kind of damage was sustained. And we unsubscribed to your podcast in the middle without even finishing. So I wrote the guy back and I said, nicely, I said, well, no offense, but we brought up both sides of the situation. I particularly said they didn't need to move the airport. They shouldn't have put the city there. I said, and we do feel like it's disrespectful to open up less than 12 hours after so many people were injured and lost their life in a horrific accident in that mall, not in the city, but in that mall. And I said, I'm sorry, but we're allowed to have opinions. And that's literally almost word for word what I said. He wrote me back and said, oh, wow. Thanks for responding in such an asshole way. It's obvious you're a jerk on the show and off the show. I'm thinking that maybe I should take all my different accounts and leave you negative reviews. But, I don't know if I've got the time to do that, but I probably will. So, yeah, I thought for a story where you just said they probably shouldn't put an airport there and you shouldn't open the stores up, I thought the guy was a little bit over the top.
You shouldn't listen. You shouldn't open Forever 21. You stay closed for another week. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out. Spencer's Gifts needs to open up immediately after a plane crash in the mall.
It's all because it was Christmas Eve. So, that's why they did it. They didn't want to be closed on Christmas Eve. But that's still, you don't know what kind of damage has been done to the structure, even if it's further down or anything. You didn't need to be open. So, my thoughts.
I agree. And like you said, you're entitled to your opinion. And as we wrap up here, and I want to throw this at you, by the way, hillbillyhorrorstories.com is the website. You can go on there and then subscribe to the podcast with Jerry and his wife, Tracy. As we wrap up here, I'm going to name some people, and I want you to say what horror movie they should star in.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Horror movie that includes Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, good. Let's so people went up the stairs.
Joe Biden.
Oh, wow. Joe Biden, he should be, what was that movie? He should definitely be in Silence of the Lambs. At least Silence. I don't know about other lambs, but.
Nancy Pelosi.
I would love to see her in Friday the 13th. Just in that bathing suit, just maybe laying in there with some young teenage boy and then Jason come in. I could picture that.
Oh my God. I don't know how we top that. That right there, picturing Nancy Pelosi in a bathing suit with a teenage boy in Friday the 13th. I don't know how we can possibly top that as far as wrapping up this.
I'm sorry. That was Paul Pelosi. I meant to say.
Paul Pelosi in a bathing suit with a hammer and never mind. I'm not going to finish it. Hillbillyhorrorstories.com is the website. Go on there, subscribe to the podcast. Extremely entertaining. Over 900 episodes out there for you to enjoy now. They are continuously cranking them out. Over 18 million downloads. You should go on there and find out why people are listening. It's a great podcast. You're a great human being. Thank you so much for being here, Jerry. I appreciate you, man.
Appreciate it, Derek. Thank you, buddy.
You're awesome, man. Jerry Pauly, Hillbilly Horror Stories is the podcast. Again, go online and find them, hillbillyhorrorstories.com. Go on my website, too, by the way, DerekRichards.com, and find out where I'm going to be playing in your neck of the woods. I've got some dates in Florida coming up in January. Also doing some stuff with comedian Dave Landau in February and also in April. And I'm going to be at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club at the MGM Grand here in Las Vegas, December 26th through January the 8th. Grab a copy of my album, Double Down, available wherever you grab your downloadable stuff. iTunes, Spotify, Amazon. It is right there. Also catch the Irish Comedy Tour. We will be starting at the end of February. Doing about, I think it's 15 or 16 dates right now. Super excited to get on the road with those guys. The IrishComedyTour.com is our website. Myself, Damon Labert, Derek Keane, and Mike Malone. My name's Derek Richards. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go online. YouTube has all of our episodes of A Drink with Derek. And I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to A Drink with Derek. Find out when Derek is appearing near you by checking out DerekRichards.com. See you next time for A Drink with Derek.